Well, Ali and Caleb, thanks for helping me with my project.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
welcome.
Could y'all introduce yourselves a little?
Hi, I'm Allie. Um, Currently living in New Hampshire with my boyfriend. Um, I don't know what else to say.
I'm said boyfriend. I'm Caleb. I live with her. Um, there's nothing really else fancy. I don't know. I'm a fan of space a little bit more than she is.
This is true.
Awesome. Well, first question. Did you know that NASA is planning to land people back on the moon in 2024?
I had heard rumors about that.
I had
And
no idea, to be honest.
and the rumors you heard, do you remember where maybe you heard them from?
I don't. It might have been somewhere online. It might. I think it was Reddit. But I don't think I remember delving too far into it.
Um, so out of like the 120 interviews I've had so far, I would say like 15 of them had people that knew we were actually going to the moon in 2024. So it's like it's like
Wow.
clearly below the consciousness of society. So, what do you think it would take to make people more aware?
Hmm.
Well, maybe like putting the information more out there on social media that's more access to the younger demographic, I would say.
Hmm.
Like a lot of people now are either using Facebook or like Instagram or like TikTok or something like that. So I guess like making an not like an ad, but like an information of saying like, hey, like this is happening or this is a goal that NASA wants to do.
Yeah.
Which is I'm like actually kind of curious, like how is that gonna work? Like what do you have to do to get on the moon?
To get on the moon? Well, first you need to be able to launch people off of Earth, get them to around the moon, land them on the moon. And then ideally, they wouldn't be just huddled in their spacecraft. So you would like to have a suit that they could actually go out and, you know, look around, pick up rocks, put instruments down, then get
Right.
back into a spacecraft, have that, um, come off the surface of the moon. And usually, I mean, the thing is, it takes a lot of energy to change the velocity of something. And that energy comes in the form of um, fuel, which takes up a lot of mass. And the more mass you have, the more energy it takes.
Mhm.
So the less that you can take all the way down to the moon's surface,
Mhm.
the less energy you need to come back. So what we did with the Apollo program was we had like the command module circling the moon and then the lander land on the moon. And the lander was just enough to get people to the surface of the moon and to get them back to the command capsule, which meant that all that fuel that you needed to get back to Earth never had to slow down completely on the moon. So you didn't have to have the fuel to get that going again. So I think the plan is essentially to do something very similar to what we did in the Apollo program at this point, where you launch everything up in one go. You try to keep as much in orbit as you can, just have the bare minimum go down to the moon surface, and then come back up to meet with that. And then that brings them back to the Earth, and then they probably still splash down in the ocean type of thing. So,
Oh, yeah.
but
So are they currently still working on that goal right now amongst the whole entire like COVID situation?
they are.
Let's push forward because like I know the goal is 2024, but a lot of things right now are on hold.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the good thing about NASA and putting together spacecraft is I mean, you're not dealing with the public, so it's not like having a restaurant where you have unknown people
Yeah,
coming in.
right.
And also, a lot of the work they do is in very much controlled environments anyway, like clean rooms, and they're already wearing equipment to protect the spacecraft and protect themselves. Um, so I think it's a little bit easier for them to avoid from having one worker get other workers sick. But
Mhm.
all their meetings they've moved online, so they're not like putting people in a conference room or having these big gatherings and things like that. So one really cool thing. Have y'all heard of the International Space Station?
Yes, I have. I've seen it actually in real life.
Oh, really? So like
Yeah,
watch it go overhead?
yeah, I remember timing it with an orbit when I was a lot younger. There was some sort of thing online, and I watched the two dots go in parallel. It's really cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
And if you saw with just your just without any like telescope or binoculars, just
yeah, it was
looking up.
very odd. It was really neat.
Okay, and how long did it last? Do you remember?
Oh, it was less than a minute. It was just like watching a slow plane go by, but it was just seeing two blinking stars basically is all you could denote from it at night, and it would just slowly go by in the sky, and it was just cool to know that that was what it was, you know.
Um, so I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know how long it takes for the International Space Station to go around the Earth?
Oh,
I don't.
I want to say it's somewhere in the teens, like per 24 hours, because I know that goes 17,000 miles an hour, give or take. I don't remember how long it takes from an over the Earth, though.
Yeah, it's about every 90 minutes. So you're being in the teens every day works out perfectly, but it goes around the entire Earth every 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, that brings us to like a common misconception about weightlessness in space. Do y'all know why the astronauts float?
I do.
Oh, tell me.
Well, it's because when they're locked in orbit, they're always falling. So it's a continued fall around the Earth because it's like the best way I've heard it explained is it's like trying to shoot a cannon really far, and if you angle it right, then it will continue to go and fall towards the Earth, but it'll lock in what they call orbit. So it's always falling around the Earth. It's really cool.
Wow, and I would say out of the 120 people I interviewed, you would be the one. And I would not be surprised if you're like the one of all the people for the next 1,700 interviews that I do. So, so I'll let you know if somebody else
Yeah,
is able to answer that question. But that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people like there's no gravity in space. Is like the answer that they come up with. But then what keeps the moon from just flying off, and what keeps us from just going in a straight line? It's like
Right.
so that's so have you seen the Vomit Comet, the plane that flies like that?
Yeah, yeah. They've had a ton of celebrities up in those things.
It's yeah, so it's a chance to experience weightlessness without going to space for 30 seconds at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what do you think about space exploration? It's going to cost a lot to go to the moon.
Yeah,
Um,
it does.
and a lot of people are like, we have so many problems here on Earth. Why are we spending this to go to the moon or explore space? How do you kind of think about that? I mean, like, what's your thoughts?
Your thoughts on it?
I don't know. Well, I mean, like, that's really hard because I guess, like, if it's going to be very expensive to get to the moon itself, then only very few selected people can actually go.
Mm-hmm.
But if it becomes a thing where, like, you know, I guess available to more people, maybe more people want to go. Um, I don't know. What's yours?
I feel like for me, it really depends on the purpose of the mission. So like right now, it's expensive, and it depends on what we're doing. We could be laying groundwork for stuff we don't know about yet. I've heard people talk about mining certain types of hydrogen from the moon to use for fuel sources and things like that. I mean, if we're just using rock collection, I know we only have like a certain number of samples in like NASA labs that they're really important because they give to museums and things like that. And sometimes they're used for like certain innovations or whatever in technology. I've heard, I don't really know 100%, but like that could be valuable. But other than that, unless they're starting to do some sort of like maybe they're trying to make a base to like have people work on there who are really, really intelligent and athletic, just like astronauts are, and like start a small like research colony, even like that would be interesting. But I don't know. It's there's a lot of risk involved with it, and it is really expensive. So I think when it comes down to it, it's really important to choose the right mission that will help everybody kind of get the collective understanding of, oh, this is a good purpose. Because that's like the first thing you want to look for is why. A lot of people ask that. So
I know pretty much everybody I've talked to they get around to that question. It's like, why are we going? What's the point? What they hope to accomplish, and things like that. And unfortunately, it's not like just one thing that they talk about accomplish. It's like a basket of things, right?
Yeah.
So,
Hey, that's good.
so I mean, one thing is the first time we went to the moon, we landed in 1969. Last time, 1972. We had 6 landings on the moon. Each included 2 people, both white men. Um, there's never been a woman on the moon, never been a non-white person on the moon. And as part of this time of going back to the moon, they're planning to have the first woman land on the moon. So
Wow.
um, I've gotten mixed reactions to that from people, but I was wondering what y'all think about that.
I think that's awesome. It's like
Yeah.
really cool to have like more diversity, be able to go up to the moon and explore and have that accomplishment and be like, yeah, I did it. I went to the moon. Thanks.
I think it's
It's
massively
kind of cool.
important
Yeah.
because, like, I know that there have been women who have been in orbit in the ISS, and I think it's cool because, like, well, so even hypothetically, if you ask the large question of if people want to colonize the moon, it's like you can't just colonize with males only. So we need to know how it affects both people and how we would feasibly, live healthy in that environment for who knows how long. Because like they need to get enough supplies. If they're going to be researching or doing whatever, it's a long time and they're far away. So we need to know that they're going to be okay.
It's funny, as you said that about colonizing, you can't colonize with males only. Reminded me of a science fiction book I read one time where the premise of the book is, why do you even need males at all? And it was just,
I've heard that theory a lot, and it's just like I don't know. It's a definitely an interesting thing to think about.
hmm. Um, so if you look out at the future of humanity, like if you think beyond your lifetime and maybe you go even like 500 years out,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think civilization and humanity looks like at that point? And like, I mean, are we still pretty much in cities on the Earth, or have we expanded to the oceans? Do we have a colony on the moon? I mean, like, how
Mm-hmm.
far do you think life and humanity and civilization would have gone?
Don't know.
I mean, like it's always like depicted in like movies and stuff that we're all gonna have this like hoverboards and like really cool like different teleportation things or stuff like that. So like, I guess that's how I see it in my head, just because it was depicted in movies, and I guess that'd be kind of cool to
Yeah.
have in the future. Um, if we can get to that level, like the movie Xenon, like they were able to get on the moon and had McDonald's on the moon. Like that'd be kind of cool. That's just how I would imagine it being in 500 years.
Right.
I
So
haven't
I love
heard
it.
of Xenon actually.
Oh,
Xenon, is that it? And it's a
Yeah.
movie? When
Yeah.
did it come out?
I was a kid, but it was a Disney movie.
I'll look it up.
Um,
Um,
it had like Raven Simone and a few other people.
1999.
Yeah, it was an old movie.
Awesome.
Actually, it's Zenon.
Oh, say
ZE.
it.
Yeah.
Zenon.
Zenon, yeah. But to speak to more what you were saying, it is like it's one of those things because it's so difficult to really understand because it's fun to watch and look back in the past and see what they thought our life would be like right now. Excuse me, because they thought we would be much farther ahead than we are. And we are in certain ways, but not in the ways that they thought. I feel like people look at the future and they think these massive achievements, these big like concrete developments that we've put ourselves above a major step, and we don't look back at an old step. If anything, we would look at cars as antiquated. We'd be like, wow, how do we even use cars? How do we ignored this very simple rule and didn't, so you hope that there's some sort of pursued, development, and we reach a goal where we have some sort of discovered, or maybe underfunded technology that leads us to being like, I've heard people talk about space elevators, carbon nanotubes, making things that are more advanced, but like there's not enough funding in that stuff right now. So it's like we're stuck with, aluminum framed cars right now. If we all had, if we all could put our money into something that would maybe further the development of
Research,
humans, then it's like, all right, like stem cells and things like that. Like we don't fund things like that, but they've shown amazing results, you know? It's just like you hope that we would maybe have a better collective consciousness about that as a society and want to forward ourselves, but I feel like people get stuck in their day to day.
Yeah, definitely. So have y'all heard of Elon Musk?
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that he likes to talk about is, technology doesn't improve by itself. It only improves if you have people trying to improve it. In fact, technology by itself will actually get worse as the people who build it, their skills kind of go away and, it's not being worked on. And it really seems like in our society, we sort of figure out how to do something well enough, and then we like lose interest in it. And we just like, that stays frozen in time. Like building roads, like
Mhm.
it's hard to imagine like any big breakthrough coming in building roads. We're still going to, chop down everything, create it with the same tools, put like the same cement or tar down. And
Right.
I was wondering if y'all saw it the same way. Like, do y'all see more evidence like certain pieces of technology are just essentially we're just kind of barely holding on with those solutions, and there's like no real innovation happening?
I think that's also kind of tricky because it goes back to what you were talking about with the landing missions, because like it's almost like a built-in efficiency in us. So it's like once we find something that works, we know the cost of that tool that's needed to solve that job. We know exactly how it works. We can build parts to fix the machines to do the job, and they'll run just the way we need them, and they get by, and they're a really good standard. So it's like pushing the standards is great because that brings us to new things, but comes along with it all these new sorts of problems that we don't know about. So I feel like maybe we're stuck solving a lot of those problems right now.
Mhm.
And what do you think would need to happen in order? I mean, one other thing is the first time we went to the moon, we had 3 billion people in the world. Now we have close to 7 billion. Now that means we had 3 billion brains, and now we have 7 billion brains. So we should be more than twice as smart. And they didn't even have the internet,
Right.
which maybe that makes them, maybe that kind of nets out to zero. I'm not sure.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's like, what do they say? It's the collective knowledge of humanity that grows because people think that like we get smarter or whatever, but really we just share more information.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that's like who knows like the amount of discoveries that would have gone unseen had we not had the level of connectivity that we have now. It's super cool.
And what do you think about the thought that true innovation takes individuals that believe in the innovation and willing to sacrifice for it, and that like governments and large organizations really have trouble with anything that even remotely comes to belief, like unless you can like prove a case or it's like something we've been doing over and over and over again? It seems like they're kind of stuck in sort of those same paradigms we had. But it's really like the individual with an idea that's willing to go out there and make it happen that's the source of innovation. And I mean, what do you think about that? Is that how you see it too?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as the way. I mean, you're to me, you're painting the picture of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I mean, that man, like his innovation in SpaceX is it's groundbreaking. I've never seen rockets land on their own when they come back. So like, I feel like that would be a big enough pitch and be like, look, we can reuse rockets if you find, and we work on this. And then he also has a long list of accomplishments. I mean, Tesla on its own, like if that doesn't show the government that he can do amazing things for the economy. He made PayPal when he was young. It's like, I don't know how he doesn't get more funding. Like the fact that he's almost gone like broke and he works like 80-hour work weeks and sleeps in his factory and does all this hard dedicated stuff, and the government still has to turn like a hardened die because they're focused on whatever sort of other public issues that gets everybody riled up right now. It's just kind of like, you don't want to turn your attention to that. You really don't think there's a lot more value in it if you invest just like a little bit. There's a lot, I don't know. It's kind of one of those like we're stuck on the ground looking at the person over the fence versus looking up, in some respect.
Yeah, indeed. And, we have some like structural things that kind of reinforce that. Like, who gets elected to be in politics? Well, the person that was able to raise the most money to go and get the most votes, and where did that money come from? That money came from people who benefit from the current system.
Yeah.
And who's threatened by innovation? Well, it's funny you should ask that.
Right.
I guess overall, just like, I don't think a lot of people, again, like I asked me earlier about like how do people know about getting on the moon? Like they don't really know about that side unless you get their attention. And it's really hard to get people's attention nowadays because it's all spanned over random social media
Mhm.
things,
Mhm.
or politics now because of like what's going on. But yeah, it would be very hard to get someone's attention to be like, hey, like this is happening. Like
Mm.
we can do better. Like you can do better. I don't know. I think that's just another part of it as well.
Yeah, indeed. And, it seems like, kids who are small are like idealistic and, adventurous. And
Yeah.
then as they go through school and get older, it's kind of, somehow taken out of them. And they become, it seems like they're more on the conveyor belt of
Yes.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
other things, And
Mm-hmm.
what do you think needs to change with regards to our schools so that those kids turn out to be entrepreneurs and they become more Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and people like that?
Right. That's tricky because I've heard I've heard it said that once kids leave the house at a young age and they go to school and they go to kindergarten, first grade, it's no longer kids raised by parents, it's kids raised by kids,
Hmm.
because that social influence is so strong. And I don't know enough about child psychology or anything like that that makes kids tend towards wanting to do things that are fun. I think it's kind of a human nature thing. I think people are driven towards comfort and not driven towards hard things. But over struggle and discomfort is what brings results towards something that's bigger than yourself. And I feel like it takes a lot of people a long time to realize that, like, we're aiming towards something like that's real joy in life, putting something into a bigger purpose that's bigger than you, or helping somebody else. It's a forwarding step, and that brings a lot of people a lot of satisfaction. So like getting a young kid to realize like that their actions now are so much more important than they realize is so difficult, because I don't know, like they're stuck in those social situations, they just want to go outside and play. And it's like some kids are just different. I think Elon was different, he built computers with his brother and things like that. And they wrote programs and he taught himself. I mean, getting that kind of inspiration into like a 14-year-old, I mean, it almost has to derive from themselves, so it's tricky. I don't think I know
Mm-hmm.
the answer to that question, but it's an important question to ask.
It's true. Like you can give someone all the tools
Mm.
and things that they need to succeed in life or whatever, but it's really up to them at the end of the day. Like, do they want to take it upon themselves to like actually do the mission or accomplish whatever they need to accomplish?
Yeah.
Um, like example, my mom, like she'd always give me the tools how to do something, and then she'll show me like twice how to do it, and after that she's like, I already told you, you have all the stuff, you can figure it out. That was pretty much how I was taught growing up.
And the, I guess looking back on that, uh, did that make you more resilient and self-reliant? Or, I mean, like,
I would say so, yes, because I became way more independent growing up that way, because she didn't take my hand the whole entire time and like babysit me every single time or helicopter mom me at all. Like she did the first round only out of safety, and then afterwards she's like, nah, she'll figure it out. Is that hot plate hot? Go touch it. I don't know. Like it was like stuff like that. Or like even things simple as cooking. Like I never like to this day, I don't cook with the recipe. I just go with it. And it comes
She's
out
good
good.
too.
oh, that's excellent.
So like yeah, it's definitely like a learning lesson. Like, you can get them all tools, but at the end of the day, if the person wants to actually do it and like, you're like, yeah, I can make that meal or whatever, then that's up to them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's very true. And I've heard this theory. I have this book, in fact, I haven't read it, it's about yay thick, called Generations, that talks about kind of like generational patterns and how you have like a generation that really has to struggle and fight, and they really have to kind of slog it out, and they create like the things that allow for a better world, and then their children come along. They didn't have the struggles, but they still were very much associated with struggles, and so they appreciate kind of like what they have. But they're like, I'm going to give my children like the absolute best. They're not going to have to do anything. So they do that to their children, and then their children are like, kind of, expectant, and they privileged, and they don't have to try for anything and what have you. And essentially at that point you start having like the decay and the collapse. Then you have like the collapse and it begins all over again.
Right.
So I mean, do you think that's like an accurate representation of sort of like the cycles? I mean, do we go through cycles, first of all, and then what do you think that's kind of close to the cycles that we do go through?
Yeah, I think it's definitely cyclical that way. Like it's so tricky to separate from what people are doing even in a 40-year span from a bigger image. So we get focused on our goals, excuse me, and the next thing we want to do. And when we've got that thing, then we want to do the next thing. We get that thing, we want to do the next thing. But we don't look at the overall thing. So like I didn't know when I was growing up, I didn't know my dad in his accomplishments and appreciate what he had done for a long time until I was probably in my teenage years, and I could look back and reflect because I had enough of a past. So that relativity. And then once I had seen that, I appreciated him a lot more. But from that time when I was younger up until my teenage years, I just knew him as what he was that week. My dad doing what he did. Maybe I slowly built memories with him. But, once you're able to appreciate a larger image, and it's really difficult to do that through societies, through cultures, through generations, through people across a whole planet, for us to have a global mindset is really difficult. But it's important, it's important to be conscious of it even a little bit.
And it's not like the entire globe is going through the same cycles at the same time.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see like maybe in Latin America and Africa and China and India, they're very much in that struggling phase, right? And they're able to like build the foundation that allows for them to kind of provide a better world for their children. But
Right.
it takes a while. So you see like these countries kind of having that character that of grit and determination and what have you. While at the same token, you see like maybe in Europe and North America as kind of having more of the attitude of entitlement and the expectancy, and it should, we deserve it, or that type of thing.
Yeah, that's tricky, because we feel like we have generations of past relatives who have worked really hard to get where we are. So it's like, it's funny how you feel like you work and then you've done enough. We have like, we did it. We've reached this point. Now we get our payback. I think the payback is the work. I think we always have to keep improving, even if it doesn't necessarily mean being first place. We're not talking like topping over a country or anything like that, but you can lift up others around you and continuously improve your situation. But we get stuck in this thing where it's like, we've pushed hard enough, now we want to coast. Now we want a reward, we want to relax. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah, or at least it's dangerous if people take that view. So I had an idea I wanted to run by you. So it's called High School Astronaut, right? And the idea is, instead of taking an astronaut to a high school for like a day, actually take a student from a high school and have them go through the astronaut experience. Like actually have them go into orbit, be a real astronaut, and then put them back into that high school. And my thought on this was, you're talking about children teaching children. I mean, in high school, you have these kids that have been together, some of them 10 years at a time. And if you take a unique experience and I try to explain it to you, you and I don't have like a really deep common palette of vocabulary and experiences to work from.
Mhm.
So, if I told you it was like to float in like the vomit comet, we don't have any, like, I don't know what experiences you have that I've had where I can like kind of explain it. And so we're kind of, that doesn't quite make it across the communication gap.
Right.
But I think it's a lot more likely after 10 years of being like closely connected, you would be able to describe that in a way that would be more meaningful
Yes.
to your peers. And I was wondering if you thought, I mean, what you think about the idea, and then if you thought that was true.
I personally, I really like the idea. I don't know. I mean, putting aside the complex, kind of plan of training a teenager and how old they'd have to be and all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. It made me think, because your background is really funny, because it's really prevalent to that question. Because I've heard of this thing called the overview effect, which is where astronauts orbit the Earth, or they've seen it from the moon, like in your background, and they get this tremendous shift in perspective about the Earth and why it's so much more important to be focused on what we need to do as as a whole species, not as like one or two people. So it's really, I feel like having somebody younger then go back after having something, even if they could get them to have something like the overview effect and feel that profound, like, look at how suspended the Earth is. That's all we have right now. And then relate that to the people in their generation. He could probably start off at least like guaranteed 20 more Harvard graduates or whatever, Ivy League graduates who would go on into, the aerospace field and then innovate who knows what for the next generation.
Mhm.
And talking about this background, this Earth that you see back there. So this is a real picture taken from going around the moon. It's the famous Earthrise picture. It's kind of been shifted over a little bit so you can see the moon or the Earth. Like, how would you describe that?
Like, it's insane to think that just that alone is the 7 billion people. We're all living in that.
That's our spaceship. Yeah.
It's everything. And then you're only so far, you're very far away from, obviously, but like looking at it, like that's all you got. And even though we have an X amount of years living in the Earth, like that's gonna be there for a very long time. It's gonna be there way past your lifetime. So it's kind of like crazy as a whole to think like I'm sitting here in my living room and I'm technically only that dot in space.
Right, the small perspective.
The small dot, and it gets even smaller.
It does. That's the God, I can't stop thinking about Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. That's all I think of is that. That's such a good speech about Earth. And he's so poetic about it. I don't know all the words to it or anything like that, but it's just like you see it and it just feels suspended. Because like you look at this blackness and it's black. And there's nothing, and there's hydrogen atoms every square whatever feet. That's it. That's all you get. And then you have stars and planets that are, an unfathomable amount of distance from each other that you can't even, wrap your head around. And we're moving through it at a ridiculously fast speed. And then we're here complaining about, your shoe came untied. It's like we have a very,
pretty much
very distorted perspective sometimes. It's very funny.
Yeah, I think that Neil Armstrong, he was standing on the moon, the first man to step on the moon, and he held up his thumb, and was able to put it over the moon like that.
Yeah.
And cover it up completely, not as what you saw there. And he's like, just thinking about, like you said, all at that time, 3 billion people living on the Earth. He's like, everybody I ever knew, every experience I ever had was hidden by my thumb. And the reporter asked him, so that must have made you feel very big. And he's like, no, actually it made me feel really, really small, to think that that's it. But you're right. That's all we have. But the interesting thing is compared to what there is, that's like so tiny, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, can we be content with that? You know, it's like awesome, but I get it. But shouldn't we as a society and civilization and people be like, there's so much more. Let's go see it. Let's do something with it.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
so you think it might have a really positive impact to take one high school student from every high school in the world, send them into space, and then put them back in that high school.
Yeah, that would be really awesome.
Yeah.
So the last question I usually ask people is, if it was safe and affordable, would you have an interest in going into space?
I would do it.
I think so. Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any other health complications, and I like the adventure. I would want to go and see, and like be able to be in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and also have that complete silence, and just like look at everything as a whole,
Mm.
and like take it in. Cause I don't know. I think that'd be like really cool.
So
Again, through all this, like, sorry to cut you off. So you go through like all this like commotion, you go through day-to-day like life, but you never really get the moment to like, you could have your peace and quiet and your silence here, I guess, but I don't think it could compare to being on the moon and just being like there.
Absolute up there.
Yeah.
So I guess if you had to rank what attaches you to it, is it like, getting to see the Earth from afar? You mentioned the solitude. How about being able to experience like weightlessness, like in orbit around the moon, or in orbit around the Earth, or on the way to the moon? Like, like how would you rank those three things, maybe?
I think feeling weightlessness is something that's probably third for me. Being on the moon would probably be, I would put that as number two, because I could see myself landing on the moon and then being there and feeling like this is another celestial body. But the overview effect sounds so much more profound. It's ridiculous. The only other thing I can think of that's similar to like the overview effect while being on the moon is not somebody looking at the Earth, but I can't remember his name. There was an astronaut that they had to have wait on the moon while it orbited, and he ended up going on the opposite side he got disconnected from NASA, so and any sort of spacecraft in the ISS, so he was alone and he couldn't talk to he was the only man ever to be totally isolated for 30 minutes in all of human history. He couldn't talk to any human, even if he wanted to.
I think that would be Michael Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about being all alone. You're right. That would be.
That's being all alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're not lonely. No one's Michael Collins lonely.
I really appreciate y'all's time and sharing your perspective with me. Did y'all have any like closing comments?
I don't. I think this is actually a really cool project that you're doing, and I'm glad and that I got the opportunity to join and be part of it.
Absolutely. So am I.
Yeah.
I hope you can take some more momentum from every interview you get. I hope you have more people that you grab, because I feel like the more people that talk about this and think about it, even to just get somebody to think about it for once in a day, is just like, it's so important. You know, that's where you get real change.
Keep giving them the tools. Keep giving them the
Yeah.
Somebody will grab them.
Somebody will grab it. Eventually they'll grab it.
Yes.
I love it. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording.